Hi! Well, this is a short video. I just wanted to make a few notes for the few people that are stumbling toward the end of my story, Song of Mornius. I have said this before, you are not seeing the final product. Unfortunately, I'm always in such a rush to get that puppy up there on YouTube, because I love sharing. It's I think everybody who creates something they're excited about, they want to share it, and it's my motivation. It's like, yeah, I can't wait to share the next chapter, so it motivates me to write the next chapter. So it's been a huge driving force for me to get off my lazy ass and put this book back, which was, I've said it before, it was almost lost. Computers crashed, and I was in depression, and I didn't have any desire whatsoever to do anything creative. So yeah, I really appreciate the people who have been hanging in and listening to the story and making me feel like I have people, an audience, actually interested in knowing what happens next. That's kind of like makes me want to keep telling the story. So anyway, I appreciate people who did that. If this book publishes in any way, shape, or form, it is hugely because of those people that have been listening to these chapters. But unfortunately for you guys, you're not getting the final thing, because I'm in such a hurry to get them up there, and then I'm driving in my car and I'm listening to them. I'm listening to myself trying to read reading these chapters, and things stick out at me that I didn't catch before. And I am going through, and I try to remember them, so when I get home I can change them. Chapter 47, I'm very proud of, but there were some things. There were some things in chapter 46 too. One of the things I've noticed is I have a tendency to use the word then a lot. And so I've been going through the chapters, and I look at the sentences that have the word then in them. And I imagine the sentence without the word then, and if it's stronger without the word, I take the word out. Sometimes it's required. Sometimes you really need that word in the sentence. But there's a lot of times when it's just there. It doesn't need to be. So I've been taking that word out. Another thing that happens, and it's really kind of, it's a little more difficult to spot it when it happens, is point of view shifts, A good example, now I've already fixed it. I'm trying to find where it is. In chapter 47, there's two scenes. The first scene is written from Farina's point of view. And she gets attacked by Malian, and, she's in pain, and da-da-da-da-da, all this bad stuff happens. And then, I'm trying to see, Galen helps her with Mornius. And so she's there, she's feeling better. I'm trying to get down to where it is. Anyway, after Malian is defeated, or he leaves, whatever, he's done what he needed to do, she looks toward Galen, and Galen is lying on the stairs. Trying to find it. Anyway. I'm not finding it, so I'm just gonna describe it. That might not even be the part where it is, but in that first scene, there's this, and if you listen to it, you'll hear it. There's a part where Galen clenches his staff with sweaty fingers, and there's nothing wrong with that sentence, except it's a little bit jarring, and it throws you out of Farina's perspective. So it's like it's a point of view shift. Farina would not be conscious or aware of Galen's sweaty hand. So how would, why would I even have that description in that sentence? So I think I changed it to, he grips the staff with rigid fingers, because she could see his fingers. Maybe she could see that his fingers seem rigid. Maybe, maybe she sees the knuckles showing through his skin or whatever. So I changed that to rigid instead of sweaty, because sweaty, one little word can change the point of view. Suddenly for a very tiny second, we're in Galen's point of view, because only Galen would know. if his hands were sweaty. So that was one of the very minor changes, and there's been changes like that throughout the chapters when I've gone back and edited. There's been little point of view shifts that shouldn't be there. You know, when you really think about it, it's like, wait a minute. In fact, there's another one where, I think this is chapter 46, where Avalar lets Lieutenant Roth go. Roth has this, he gets very upset because he thinks Melian has a sister. Avalar lets Lieutenant Roth go. Now, that particular scene is written from Avalar's perspective, if I recall. But then I have Tarek, without thought, Tarek steadies Roth with a hand. Again, how would Avalar know if Tarek has any thoughts going on in his mind? You know, that's a very small, subtle point of view shift. So I took that out. Now I just have Galen steadying him with his hand. There's no without thought or seemingly without thought, or however the sentence is written. I took that out because Avalar would not know what's going on in Tarek's head. Back to chapter 47, there were some other things that stood out to me. Then I want to make it clear, because the people who have read it, I'm not going to reread the whole chapter, but just FYI for the people who have or will read it, when Methan Mens is on the verge of making a sacrifice of this young man, I have Tarek rushing down the steps with his sword. And I'm trying to imagine this while I'm driving, you know. Rushes down the steps, he's waving his sword. Charge, you know. It's like, and all the others are standing behind Galen. How likely is that going to be? Yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, Dren Avram would probably stick close to Galen and Farina because they're the more vulnerable members. So of course, immediately I have Roth take off after Tarek. So I have now, if I can find it, I will read it. Okay. Sorry, I have to make funny sound effects as I scroll. Tarek, with Roth quick on his heels, lunged down the steps toward the pool, slashing at the air before them with their swords. Not quite sure that sentence is right yet, because Tarek is the subject and suddenly it's them. I might change it back. But anyway, the point, I'm trying to work this. So, we have Roth right on his heels. Roth is right there. His buddy Tarek needs he needs somebody to guard his back, and Roth is the one who would be there, you know. Roth kind of looks at Tarek like his adopted brother. So we changed it to Roth being there with. I did fix that sentence with Tarek and Roth. It reads now, Tarek, with Roth quick on his heels, lunged down the steps toward the pool, Tarek slashing at the air with Argus's ancient sword. Figures rushed at the two men from the shadows on both sides of the tarn, 3 black robes from each side brandishing staffs. Power roared from Melian behind them, and then the blazing stone in men's hand. At once the 6 black stone staffs absorbed it, magnified it. Galen staggered as waves of lurid flame shot toward him, hurling Tarek and Roth against the wall. So we changed that and tweaked the rest of it, so we have Roth in a different place in the cavern. So then I had to modify the rest of the chapter. So now when Avalar lunges, she goes, "Slaver!" and she runs. She thrusts Lieutenant Roth aside. Now it's Dren Avram who she thrusts aside. And when Lieutenant Roth says, "Sick bastard," from behind Galen, now he snarls it from beside Tarek. So we put Roth in a different part of the room, because he's with Tarek now, against the wall. He gets blasted by the power, just like Tarek. He gets slammed back against the wall. But it just makes more sense to me. You know, this is supposed to be like a little, it's not an army anymore, but it's a group of people. It's a force rising up against this evil. They're not just going to stand there with their arms folded while one of them charges the enemy, right? There's going to be more. Obviously, they're not all going to charge the enemy, but there has to be at least one other guy backing his commander, right? and this is, being written by somebody who's never been in a battle, I'm only trying to think, okay, well, if this was really happening, how would this go, right? It just seems to me a little bit wrong that these guys would all be standing up there and one guy would be charging. So Lieutenant Roth jumps to the rescue, and he's right there with Tarek in that scene. So something else that I added that this is what I was noticing yesterday listening to it. The little guy who's getting horribly killed, the sacrifice, is he doesn't make a sound. He's not making any sound while he's being horribly murdered. So now we have him making sounds. Let me see if I have. Here. Men's nodded, smiling at them. Through the blazing shield, his power formed. Slowly he bent over the screaming, helpless prisoner, and he slits the guy. And then I have under the blade, the young priest went rigid, sobbing, his fingers above his head splaying wide. And then a little further down I have, with downward cuts, he extended the wound, slicing sideways into the hollows below the screaming priest's jutting hips. And then a little further down I have, we have described, he's no longer screaming, we say. Galen held his breath, struggling not to retch, as he watched men step again beside his stupefied victim. So now he's to the point where he's beyond screaming. But it's like, I was, again, listening to this thinking, why is the guy not making any noise? You're being cut open, you're going to scream. It's going to hurt like hell. So we added that. So now the poor sacrificial victim is making a lot more fuss about being horribly killed. So, yeah, those are the changes I did to chapter 47. There was one other thing, and I can't remember it now. Oh, I have Argus in this chapter. I have Argus saying to the Vealer, you are going to meet your death. I've changed that to final death, since the Vealer is already dead. The Vealer is nothing more than a spirit living inside the pool. He's dead. So we're calling. What Argus tells him is, it's your final death. Now you're going to meet your final death, because it makes no sense otherwise. And when if this thing ever publishes, it'll still be changed. There will be things that I have to cut. I've actually thought about, if somebody comes back and says, we really like the story, but it's too long. It's too long for a first book. There's two possibles. I'm thinking coming up with an ending in the middle of it, and making it into 2 books. I can certainly flesh this out even more and make it into 2 books. With the current ending that I'm working on, that would be the ending of the second book, and then there would be a different ending in the middle. I've thought about doing that, because actually when you're a new writer, publishers are more interested in you if you aren't just offering them one book. If you have one book but you have other things, in the works. If you have outlines for sequels, or if you have other books that you're working on, they're more interested in you if you have some other stuff to sell than just one. Because then if the first book doesn't sell, they can try to sell your new and improved second book, because logically you're going to get better the more you write. So maybe the first book flops, but the second or third book is a winner, and then they can go back and once you have created for yourself some kind of fan base, they can go back and try to reprint or whatever those earlier books that didn't do so well, and maybe they'll do better. So there's a reason why they like you if you have more than just one book. So if this turned out to be too long for one story, I could certainly flesh it out and make it into 2. So that was my first thought, it's an idea. And the other idea that I had, if they said it's too long, and it would be entirely up to what they wanted to, is I would pull most of the Cray scenes, the Cray and Pony scenes, the scenes with Pony and the little boy. I love those scenes, but they're not absolutely important to the story. They're more like, to me, I like to have a mix of emotions going on in the story, and this serious stuff with Farina and Tarek wanting to kill her, and Cameron being sacrificed, and this bloody death of Nithravlin and stuff. I like the idea of having something light and happy, you know, kind of relieving the pressure a little bit. But if they said, oh, this story is too long, I could take out the Cray chapters. And what I would do then is I would put those chapters, they wouldn't go away, I wouldn't destroy them, they would become another book. You know, I mentioned something about making Cray, you know, Cray would still go to the land of the giants, that would still happen. But the chapters with Cray would all be a lot simpler, a lot shorter. Maybe Pony would just say, well, you know, I rescued him and he's with the giants now, or whatever. You know, it would be a short summary of what happened to the boy instead of these chapters describing the actual events. And then I could take the chapters that I had to take from this story, and that would put a huge chunk toward the first book about the story of Cray and his adventures on Hathra with the giants. So they would still be there, they just wouldn't be in this book. So these are just ideas I have kicking around in my head. This was going to be a short video. Ha! That's a joke. Nah, I don't think I can. Well, I have actually made a few, but mostly my videos never are as short as I want them to be. I'm thinking I'm going to try when this is done to try to e-publish it. But at the same time, I'm going to look into I'm trying to think of old school book publishing, because things have changed so much. It used to be you had to print out the entire book. You know, you'd have something this thick, and it's not stapled together, it's loose. And everything's just, and you rubber band it. You don't use a paper clip, you don't use one of those big clamps. You rubber band it, and you put it in a big old manila envelope, and you ship it to the publisher, and it costs a lot. It's a lot more with shipping costs now, but that's what you used to do. And if you're lucky, they open the envelope. Half the time, they don't even open the envelope. But I'm thinking maybe it's not so expensive now to try to send a book to a publisher. Maybe now you just send them a file. Maybe it's all online, and that would be so much easier. So I will look at traditional, that was the word I was trying for, the traditional publishing. I think in traditional finding a book agent for this. But at the same time, this is going to be published one way or another. If it ends up being an ebook, then it's an ebook. You know, I put a lot of work into this. I put over 15 years of my life into this book. And I'm not counting the 12 years. I'm not counting the 12 years that I did nothing. I'm counting before that. This book had been rewritten probably 12, 13 times. In fact, I think losing the book and having to recreate it is probably the best thing that could have happened to it, because I had rewritten this book so much. It was bare bones. It was short little sentences. There's all these rules that they tell you when you're trying to write. Don't use too many adjectives, you know. Don't use too many words with LYs at the end. Don't use too many words with ING at the end. You know, just all these things that you should go through and cut out any word that isn't absolutely necessary. So I had these very bare bones chapters with very, very minimum description. And I'm sorry, I think it actually, I don't want to say it destroyed the story, but it took away every writer has a voice when they write. And it took my voice away, you know. So anyway, this is now a very long video, but I think rewriting it, I put my voice back into this story, and I have LY words, and I have ING words. I have written it the way I write. This is how I write, you know, and if an editor comes back and says, well, you need to take out some of these LY words, I will do it. But until that happens, this is how I write. So anyway, just wanted to let people know that some of the things that maybe didn't make sense, or if you gave it any thought, which probably not nearly like I do, some of those things have been fixed. So if you've been watching, thanks. Bye.